Lebanon is often hailed as being rich in water, but due to the climate crisis, its farming communities are struggling to keep their soil from drying up. In our next report, we will take a look at the farmers in the mountainous northern village of Harf Bait Hasna, who are finding different ways to make ends meet, despite climate change making their lives more difficult.
When Nazi Sabra inherited this farm from his father, the land was lush green. Now Sabra's field is barren and dry. Tobacco plants and potatoes are barely surviving with little water.
Today we are experiencing, as you can see, the drought is getting worse unlike previous years. Today we are dependent on growing tobacco. We are now growing tobacco because it can live with little water. But even now it needs water because there is so little water because of the widespread drought. The temperature has changed and the climate has changed.
The village of Harf Bait Hasna is in the Danieh region of northern Lebanon. A long-neglected part of Lebanon, farmers rely solely on rainwater and drives to the nearest spring. But with fuel prices skyrocketing, this daily drive has become impossible for Sabra and other farmers. Sabra tried to plant a small patch of tomatoes to help his family cope with Lebanon's skyrocketing food prices. But the farmer has left them to die as pests swarm the rotting produce. The village of Harf Bait Hasna reeks of years of neglect. There is no sewage system, no street lights, and no garbage collection services. Lebanon's crippling economic crisis over the past 3 years has dragged 3/4 of the population down into poverty. The woes of Lebanon's rural communities are accompanied by another crisis that goes beyond corruption and financial mismanagement: climate change.
An area like this is, profoundly impacted by climate change, and climate disruption is what it should really be called. And it's very obvious why it's so disruptive and disastrous in an area like this. The entire community is very reliant on rain-fed agriculture. That's what they make their livelihood from. That's how they're surviving. And so what's happening is, and the locals tell us that, around 8-9 years ago, 10 years ago, is when they really started noticing a change in the climate.
The community built artificial ponds to collect rainwater and use them for irrigation.
These are rainwater collection ponds, and essentially what the village has decided to do, and what each person individually has been doing, is building these ponds, which are not so cheap. There's a cost associated with digging them and putting a plastic liner so the water doesn't infiltrate. And then simply what they're doing is collecting stormwater during the rainy season off of the roads.
Elsewhere in the village, people are rationing water in the house, thus keeping all clean water for consumption and washing dishes. Everything else comes from the ponds. Fatima Sabra measures that every drop of clean water is used properly. With clear water carrying a high cost, every bit helps. Sabra says she has only received 1 hour of water in the last 10 days and no electricity for 3 weeks.
I would prefer to die than this condition of living. We are living in deprivation. Like if you went to another country or you go to other parts of the country, you can have a normal house that is proper. But for us, we have nothing.
With the country's skyrocketing inflation and the Lebanese pound losing about 90% of its value against the dollar, basic operating costs are out of reach for most farmers in the area.
So many things that people take for granted become a luxury here, right? I mean, you have running water in homes in Beirut because there's a network. Yeah, that's a luxury compared to a place like this, where there isn't a network for, over half of the community. They're not connected.
Kayad is now trying to find donors to find a solar-powered well. Moreover, he has also tried to bring the attention of the government officials to the farmers of the community to have them connected to the water network. While a recent United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization report said, water scarcity, pollution and inequitable water usage has made life especially difficult for Lebanon's agricultural communities, as they struggle with skyrocketing costs in a sector that accounts for a tiny fraction of the country's economy. The Lebanese government for years has pledged to diversify its economy and invest more in its ailing agriculture sector, but has scrambled to implement structural reforms for an International Monetary Fund approved program. And if that remains the case, then the farmers in Lebanon are in for a tough ride. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.